Welcome to Real Mob Stories with James Proctor. Hope you're doing well today. I have a few things I want to share with you, including I'm going to give you my response to Jeff Nadu and the show he did about me a couple of days ago and let you know my thoughts. Also, I have an update on the Gene Borrello criminal case that he's going through in Florida. We're also going to talk about the disappointing news for Stephen Crea that came down from the appellate courts regarding his request for a new trial, and also have an update on his health and what's next for Dominic Crea and the We Push Back movement. Finally, I have an announcement to share with you today that I'm very excited about. So please do me a huge favor and smash that like button. And if you haven't subscribed to Real Mob Stories with James Proctor and you like the content, I would be grateful if you could subscribe to it. Without further delay, on to our feature presentation. So let's start off with Jeff Nadu and RJ Rogers. So on Monday, Labor Day, I did a show where I did a countdown. I did the top 10 mob genre shows, but the criteria was that each person had to have either been a made guy or was an associate of one of the crime families. And what I did, what I did was not based on any sort of what I would call my opinion. I think there was some confusion because it was pointed out, oh, how is it that you could have, for example, John A. Light above Mikey Scars, or whatever, and that's not what it was about. So the thing is, if people had listened to the show, I actually talked about the criteria I used, and so the only thing I was doing was talking about how you had the top 10 shows as far as number of subscribers. So that was the metric that I used, was number of subscribers. And I even point out that using subscribers wasn't always an apple to apple comparison, because, for example, Mikey Scars, they do most of their content on Patreon. And then you're also seeing, Joey Merlino. That's what they're doing. The Skinny with Joey Merlino they're doing most of their content on Patreon. And the only thing I wanted to point out was, what are those top 10 shows, and as far as subscribers, and then how much have they grown this year? Some of them have grown quite a bit, like Joey Merlino's grown quite a bit. Even Michael Francis, he's grown quite a bit. And then you've had others that haven't really grown so much. And so only thing I wanted to point out was, really looking at the direction of these shows and, where they were headed. I don't watch, I probably watch only a handful of these shows. And so, many of them I don't watch. But, I can see, what they're doing, what type of, kind of where they're headed, as far as, their subscribership and everything. And that's all it was. It was just, I did the countdown on Labor Day because I remember back in the day how you used to have like the top 500 classic rock songs, and you do the countdown on Labor Day, and you do the top Beatles songs and all that. So I was just doing something similar, and obviously there's other type of metrics that could be used. I mean, to be honest, if you're looking at the brand of someone, you'd have to look at things past YouTube. You'd have to look at what they're doing all over social media, what type of a presence that they have. And it's not really a one-to-one, but I just thought it was an interesting comparison of these shows, see which ones subscribers are more interested in and all that. But yeah, I mean, it's not perfect. It's not going to tell you who's best or anything like that. And what I said was that I thought what RJ's doing with Mikey Scars is they're doing a great job. I love how they go into a lot of the deep history regarding, Mikey and his part in, the mob. And, I think that part is actually interesting. And like I said, it's one of the few Patreon channels that, I'd be willing, I'm willing to pay money for. So I just think there was some confusion about it. I'm not upset with Jeff. I think Jeff actually does a good job with his show. He's got some good guests. I know that he's polarizing, and you know, there's a lot of people that don't like him, but he's definitely got a pretty big following. People um, there are people, a lot of people that like him. He does a good job of getting people, guest on. A lot of the guests that came on first with Jeff Nadu, and the thing was, I wasn't looking at any of the non, let's see, mob genre shows that didn't have a mob person as a host. So, they're, for example, OC Shorts, he does a great job. Jeff Canarsie, Jeff Nadu, a lot of good channels out there. But, I was just looking at it from the people that were actually made or were associates. And, it was just, you know, I did it for fun. Everything's fine. RJ actually reached out to me. We communicated. There's no issues there. I like RJ a lot. I like Jeff. So there's no problem there. I just thought it was kind of more humorous than everything because it just, I don't think that he understood what the purpose was of that video I did. I definitely wasn't saying that those were my choice of the best shows out there. And also I wanted to talk about the shorts that I do. I know that a lot of the content that I do is related to the YouTube Shorts, and the reason for that is twofold. One, I enjoy history, and so when I do these shorts on these historical topics, I really like it. And I have to mix it up. I have to put stuff that's more like maybe John Gotti, or I have to put stuff on Paulie Galino, different people, because that's what the audience wants to see. That's not necessarily what I find the most interesting, but I try to mix in a lot of the deep history. But I know also that not everyone's into history, and so the point was that you would see a 60-second short video about a particular mobster or a particular event in Cosa Nostra. And the difference with my shorts and a lot of others is that I hand make those. I do it from scratch. I don't take the videos that I've done and just do a clip from a existing video. I rarely do that. I actually make unique content on my shorts. And I probably spend, I do 2 to 3 a day typically. And I'll spend anywhere from 2.5 hours a day on putting together the content, because I want to make sure that it's interesting. Also, do a lot of research. I have a great guy, Tony B, that helps me out with the research. But we do a lot of planning on the shorts, and I go about it, you know, creating unique content. And not many people do that. Most people just will take their existing long form and create clips from it. All right, now on to Gene Borrello. So just wanted to let you know what's going on there with Gene. So, as you know, Gene got served up with he has an assault charge against him and then a criminal mischief charge. And what we know is that back in May he was in a restaurant, got into it with with the like one of the employees, and ended up the police ended up being called. And we know that he also, back in July, he got arrested because he had a failure to appear warrant out on him. And so he's got these two charges. And so where's things at? He was, released on his own recognizance. That saying that was back on the 20th of July. He only spent, a few hours in jail. It was a weekend. And so what's happened since then? So, he did have a court case in August. And so he pled not guilty to it. And I believe Gene wasn't present. It was his lawyer actually went in, and they filed they said, "Hey, we're fighting this, and we're pleading not guilty." So what that means is that a hearing is going to happen, discoveries has to happen, and then you know that's where things are at. And so what's next is that he'll have an in-person disposition of the case on October 2nd. And so is Gene Borrello going to go to jail over all this? So what do you think is going to happen? What I can tell you is that both of them are second degree misdemeanors. And I talked to a attorney in the county where Tampa is, and what happened there is when you have a second degree misdemeanor, the you can get basically a fine of up to $500 and up to 60 days in jail. And I'll guarantee you this, Gene's got an attorney. He's not going to go to jail over this. I mean, it's really minor, compared to other things that Gene has got involved in his past. This is very, very, very minor. He's, it's just a little bit above a ticket and like a traffic violation. But what'll probably happen is that the courts are going to, want him to do maybe a deferred adjudication, where they'll, maybe a probation, you know, he might even be able to get the thing dismissed if he's willing to do like anger management classes. And typically that's the type of things that they'll do on this, because he's got an attorney. He's, the courts just want to get this case resolved one way or the other. Very rarely does anyone really get convicted. They're going to offer something at the last minute, like some sort of deferred adjudication, probation, just to um, get the thing closed. So, that's what I expect. I'm not expecting too much. It's really much ado about nothing, to be honest. Next, we're going to talk about Stephen Crea, and also Dominic Crea, who he had the website, I'm sorry, the YouTube channel, Justice Tech Pro. He also does the We Push Back movement. And what happened was, that he's been involved with Justice Tech Pro for a few years now, and mainly he's been there to draw attention to his father's case, Steve Crea. Also just bring attention to a lot of the issues around these court cases, around you have lying informants that will provide information that ends up getting people in trouble, and these guys are actually lying and they get away with it and they continue to commit crimes. And so what Dominic has done was he started the We Push Back movement, and then he was doing a podcast called Justice Tech Pro. And anyway, we found out, a couple of weeks ago that um, Stephen Crea's conviction appeal was denied. He was convicted of murder. He also has stage 4 lung cancer. And at this point, unfortunately for, Dominic and, for the family of Stephen Crea, the 77-year-old wise guy is going to end up dying behind bars unless he can get a compassionate release. It was very interesting to me. What's when you look at the case, because I read everything around the appeal and everything, and it seemed like there were a lot of issues that was around, like the testimony of John Panisi and others, and it just seemed really strange that they're not considering some of those factors. So what the appeals court panel came back with, they said that the federal judge on the case, Kathy Siebel, didn't abuse her discretion in any rulings at or before the 6-week trial. Also, the court did write that there were harmless errors, but they weren't major factors in the jury's guilty verdicts of Crea, Matty Madonna, Christopher Londonio, or Terrence Caldwell. And so they admit to harmless errors, but how are these errors harmless? That's what doesn't make sense to me, is that how can they say that a jury would not see that as harmless? And that's why, and this is one of the things that we're seeing in a lot of these cases now where, where we're seeing a lot of issues. We saw the same thing with Vinny Basciano. There were issues with that trial. And, the courts are just coming back and saying, oh, yeah, there might have been errors, but they were harmless. It didn't really affect the guilty verdict of the jury. And how can they say that? And so it's just, to me, it's just maddening when you see this. And so, people like Stephen Crea, where he had actual issues with the trial, they're not going to give him a chance. So what happens now is I think they can appeal this once more to the Supreme Court, but the reality is most likely, what I know about these type of cases, it's not going to ever be admitted to the court. The court's going to come back and not hear the case. That's they don't hear most cases. It's like 1 out of 100 cases does the Supreme Court actually hear that an appellate court has brought up. So I'm not, it just doesn't look like he's going to get out unless he can get a compassionate release. And so Dominic did mention in his last podcast that I think that's his last show. So that doesn't mean that the We Push Back movement is changed. That's still going to be happening. He's going to put more emphasis and effort into the website itself. You're going to see a lot more documentation being put out there. You're going to see some of these informants being exposed, when they're lying and all that. It's just that, at this point, he's not going to do the Justice Tech Pro podcast, but people can still support him through through the website. He doesn't make any money off this. It's nothing about anything like that. It's about public awareness. It's about potential jury members being able to understand stuff like that, because we all could potentially be on a jury. And so it's more about education. And I think that he's done a good job on that. I was actually surprised that there wasn't, that they weren't going to allow a retrial on his case, to be honest. So, we'll see what happens, with that. Apparently, people have written Stephen Correa. He doesn't write people back. That's just not his thing. But apparently, he was doing pretty well. He didn't think that there was much of a chance of this appeal happening. So he seemed to be in good spirits, and I think he's doing some treatment, which is apparently seeing a little bit of success. So, obviously, best wishes for, you know, Mr. Korea and his, cancer treatments and all that. So just wanted to kind of give you that update and let you know that you could, that just because Justice Tech Pro podcast isn't going to continue, that doesn't mean that he won't maybe be on some shows. I know he's doing stuff with Joey Merlino, so he might go on there from time to time, and but he's definitely going to be concentrating a lot on the We Push Back website, and getting a lot of the documentation updated on there. Okay. And so next is I have an announcement to make. And so, as you know, I really enjoy, digging deep in the history of the mob. And I've been putting out stories in my YouTube shorts about mob guys that, most people out there don't even know about. And so I know for a fact that there's literally about 100 shorts about mob guys that have never been discussed on other channels. And for me, the history of Cosa Nostra is much more interesting than what we see today with these guys. Yeah, I'm in the process of putting together a Patreon channel. I haven't finalized the name yet, but it'll probably be something like Cosa Nostra Historical Society. With my passions history, there's so much content that has been put out there. And I know there's people that'd like to know more about it. And just to let you know, the Patreon channel is not going to change anything being done on this channel. We're still going to put up the videos and shorts like today. However, I'm setting up this Patreon channel so people who have an interest in deep history like me can be part of this. I know that not everybody's into the history, and that's cool, but I know that there are many viewers on here that do like history and be interested in joining this new Patreon. And so the plans for Patreon is to provide longer content about the history of Cosa Nostra. It's not just about me and what I want, but it's going to be interactive and engaging, and it'll be a place where people can talk about mob history, and then you as users will actually have a say on what content's put out. So if you want to see deep dives into some of the smaller mob families, we can do that. Maybe, you're into Chicago or Canada or even Sicily, we can do that. And my plan is to have everything available from court documents to photos to biographies to mini documentaries. And it's going to be a rich library of content that you can't find anywhere else. And also, I plan on setting up 2 levels for the Cosa Nostra Historical Society. The first level will be the patron level, and it's going to allow you access to all the content. We're going to have live events, panels, special events, and all that. And then the second level, I'm calling it the ambassador level. And what that does, it allows you as an ambassador to be an honorary producer of the content. So ambassadors will have access to me, and each of you will have my phone number, my contact information. We'll have regular meetings where we talk about the content and what you'd like to see. And again, this isn't about me choosing what we do, but you will help decide. And also, I plan on having a board of advisors for the Patreon channel. So this small group will help plan out the future of this channel, because my goal is to actually eventually make this a nonprofit organization. And, I know there are several subscribers to this channel that have great knowledge of mob history and have even been involved and around guys in that life. And so Patreon's going to be a more serious platform for all of us interested in keeping the history alive. Regarding the price point, the patron level is only going to be $4.99 a month. And then the higher level ambassador level is going to be $9.99 a month. I didn't want to make this expensive. At the same time, by having a small monthly price, I feel like we can ensure that the people joining are serious and want to be part of it. I don't want anybody joining Patreon if they're not interested. And the difference between the patron and ambassador levels are that just the ambassador levels will have more access to me. They'll be part of making decisions on the channel and its content, both for Patreon and the YouTube channel. And also, the ambassadors will be honorary producers, and I'll be recognizing those people on my YouTube videos. I think it can be a lot of fun, but at the same time, I think we can do some good research and curate good content that's accurate and interesting. I'll be working on setting up the Patreon this weekend. I want to make sure that there's content already there on day one. What's unique about this Cosa Nostra Historical Society is that it's not just putting out a show a day early or whatever. You have these Patreon channels where you don't get much value. For me, my primary goal is to make it worth your time and the small price point. And I guarantee you that whatever revenue is generated by the Patreon channel is going to go back into the content. And it's just crazy how much, for example, getting court documents are on Pacer. I use Pacer to get, a lot of these court documents, like the Stephen Crea documents. And Pacer charges 10 cents a page. And, a lot of these documents are 100 or 200 pages, and that's just one document. And so I know, some months I spend $200 just on Pacer. But to get to the real history, you have to go into those deep resources. One thing different too is that, you'll have these people who do documentaries, but they use AI and it's horrible. I just want you to know everything I do it manually. And although it's more time consuming, I know the content's going to be better. I've never found content generated from Chat GPT even marginally good. In fact, it's horrible. I don't like the AI voices either. And like I said, I want to provide the best user experience. And I just will let you know when we're ready to launch Patreon, but it should be very soon. And then to conclude, I want to share with you a mini documentary I did on an interesting old timer named Anthony Riella. And so this is the example of the type of content that you're going to see on Patreon. And Anthony Riella is very interesting. He's from Sicily. He ended up coming over to the U.S. through New York very early. He was a made guy in Sicily, and then he ended up in Rockford, Illinois, believe it or not. And he was there for a few years, but then he comes back to the Jersey. Comes back to Jersey and is instrumental in being part of the Jersey mob. And he's also was a member of the Bonanno family. He was close to Joe Bonanno. And this guy actually was like an unofficial consigliere for Sam de Cavalcante. And, this guy was a capo regime with the Bonanno family. He ran Jersey for the Bonanno family, but he has a really interesting history. And so, I know a lot of people don't know who he is, but, that's the type of stuff I want to provide to you on Patreon. And so this is what I'm providing now, this mini documentary, so you can see what type of content to expect. So anyway, thank you for watching the show, and here is the mini documentary. In the shadowy world of the American Mafia, few figures stand out like Tony Riella. a man whose life was a complex tapestry of loyalty, betrayal, and old-world Sicilian values. From his humble beginnings in San Giuseppe, Yato, Sicily, to his rise as a powerful captain in the Bonanno crime family, Tony Riella's story is one of intrigue, survival, and the ever-present tension between tradition and change. In today's episode of Real Mob Stories with James Proctor, we take a deep dive into the life of Antonio Tony Riella, a mafioso whose influence spanned decades and continents. Antonio Tony Riella was born in 1896 in the small Sicilian village of San Giuseppe Yato, a place steeped in mafia history. Riella came from a family of mafiosa with deep ties to the Bruscas, Polizzis, Troias, and Spinas, who controlled the mafia in San Giuseppe throughout the early 20th century. It's believed that Riella may have been made in Sicily before making his way to the United States, following in the footsteps of many other young men seeking new opportunities in the American underworld. In October of 1926, Riella entered the United States as a stowaway, arriving at the port of New York. To stay in the country, he stole the identity of someone with a similar name, a bold move that would set the tone for his future in the mafia. Riella began his American mafia career in the Springfield and Rockford area, aligning himself with his uncle Vincenzo, Big Vince Troia, and the influential mob boss Frank Zito. During the Prohibition era, Riella operated bootlegging operations, establishing his reputation as a formidable player in the underworld. Riella and his uncle became allies of Salvatore Maranzano during the Castellamarsi War, a bloody power struggle that ultimately shaped the modern American mafia. However, when Troia moved to Newark, New Jersey in the 1930s, Riella followed, seeking to expand his influence. In Newark, Riella's life took a dramatic turn. His uncle, Vincenzo Troia, a representative of Salvatore Maranzano, attempted to wrest control of the Newark Mafia from Gaspar D'Amico, a powerful and dangerous figure. In 1935, D'Amico struck back, having Troia and his associates murdered. Rumors swirled that Riella was involved in the betrayal, perhaps even helping to set up his own uncle. Whether he did so out of self-preservation or genuine betrayal remains a mystery. Following the murders, Riella formed a partnership with Stefano Don Steve Badami, who was described as the founder of the Jersey family, also known as the De Cavalcante family. This partnership further solidified Riella's position in the underworld. He also became brother-in-law to Lucchese Capo, Settimo Big Sam Accardi, further strengthening his mafia ties. In the 1930s, Riella joined the Bonanno family after the Newark group disbanded. Before being officially made, Riella turned over his profits from the numbers rackets he had been involved in with his uncle. His loyalty and business acumen didn't go unnoticed. Riella was an old-school Sicilian who was very serious, old-fashioned, proper, and very conservative and thrifty. Although he was a mafioso, Riella was liked by most and was considered a man of his word that helped out all of his fellow Sicilian friends. He was always seen dressing impeccable with Italian suits and dark sunglasses. According to reports, Riella acted as an unofficial consigliere for the De Cavalcante family, assisting their administration while maintaining his loyalty and ties to the Bonanno family. This dual role highlighted Riella's cunning and ability to navigate the complex web of mafia alliances. One of the most infamous moments in mafia history was the Appalachian Meeting of 1957, a gathering of the nation's top mobsters in upstate New York. Antonio Riella was among the attendees, and his presence at the meeting further solidified his status within the mafia. When questioned by authorities, Riella claimed he was there to visit a sick friend, insisting that he often cared for poor people in need. However, his refusal to divulge the true reasons for the meeting led to him being cited for contempt of court. By the 1950s, Riella had risen to the rank of captain, running the Bonanno family's New Jersey faction. His wealth and influence continued to grow with his legitimate businesses, including motels in Newark and Little Falls, New Jersey, serving as fronts for his criminal activities. Interestingly, one of the hotels he co-owned with boss Joe Bonanno, son Bill, and Colombo soldier Mike Marino. Apparently, he had a criminal record that including permitting prostitution on the premises of his motels and for narcotics. Even in his later years, Antonio Riella remained active in the mafia.
In the late 1970s, when Bonanno soldier Benjamin Lefty Ruggiero needed to make connections in Milwaukee with boss Frank Ballestieri, it was Riella, then 82 years old, who facilitated the introductions. Riella was the only guy whom Lefty knew that had contacts in Chicago, and Riella made the calls to Chicago to set up a meeting and asked the Milwaukee guys to make the introductions between Milwaukee and Lefty Ruggiero. Despite his age, Riella's influence remained strong, a testament to his enduring power and respect within the mob. Riella continued to serve the Bonanno family into the 1980s, though he eventually stepped down from his role as a soldier in his elderly years. He lived out his final days in New Jersey, passing away in 1992 at the age of 96. From his early days in Sicily to his rise as a captain in the Bonanno family, Riella's story is one of survival and adaptability in a world where trust was scarce and betrayal was often just around the corner. His legacy, like that of many mafiosi, is a complex mix of criminality and cunning, with a lasting impact on the mafia landscape in New Jersey and beyond. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the life of Antonio Tony Riella. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Real Mob Stories with James Proctor for more in-depth looks at the lives of America's most notorious mobsters. God bless, and we'll see you in the next episode.